SportsGrid.
We have a Game 7. Betting above the rim pro basketball. Today, Kevin Walsh with Tom Vecchio and Coach James Young as we have a Game 7, the NBA Finals, which featured a minus 750 favorite.
700, 750.
Yep.
Yeah.
A team that many picked to win in 5, some 4, some 6. Nobody got it. We're here in 7 with the Indiana Pacers, a 7.5-point underdog in the game. The Oklahoma City Thunder are minus 290 to win the NBA championship, plus 235 on the Indiana Pacers, as the Pacers, JY, with their backs against the wall, avoided a 3-game losing streak and dominated the Thunder in their building.
It was truly impressive to see what and how Indiana played, backs against the wall. I was worried about a little bit of nervousness, obviously. Shout out to Rick Carlisle, honestly. Calling a timeout down 8-2 may have been the smartest play of the game. Just getting them settled down after a slow start. But it was just honestly a 3-point barrage out of Indiana. And then once they started hitting threes, they started opening up. And it was uncharacteristically really bad basketball out of Oklahoma City. I thought SGA was off. I thought, they did a really good job of flooding the area. Anytime SGA drove, they kind of came with the second guy. SGA was spinning, and they were kind of picking his pocket. I also think, is Tyrese Halliburton really hurt? Did we get sucked into the open up? Because, that guy walked out of that press conference like he got shot after Game 5. And then he looked like he was shot out of a cannon. There you go.
First one's on the board.
First segment. But I thought Halliburton looked absolutely great, and it's interesting to see how he looked, Tom, as we go into a Game 7.
Yeah, it reminds me of, Pat Mahomes dealing with the ankle injuries over the past few postseasons. It's like, he's going to play. Like, and then he goes out there, he's like, it's fine.
Right.
I definitely don't think Halliburton looked 100%. But he definitely did not look bad.
That guy was spinning like the Jackson 5 when he did an assist. You don't do that with a bad calf. I do that with a bad calf. I'm down for like a month.
So I think at least the early portion of the game, coaches, you alluded to, was definitely defined by the runs, where starting off 0 of 8, 1 of 9 for the Pacers, that is, and then clawing their way back. And it didn't all come in like one fell swoop. It's like, listen, we're gonna hit some threes, we're gonna play some defense, we're gonna get out in transition, we're gonna whittle this away, and then before you know it, they had the lead, and all of a sudden they're up, and I'm like, hang on, what's going on with the Pacers? They're 6-point underdogs, whatever, is at home, and the runs are what defined that game. And obviously, things took a turn as we got to the start of the fourth quarter, when most of, if not all, the starters were pulled. What we see in the first half of the first quarter for Game 7, I think will tell us what type of game we're going to be getting. I expect a lot of trepidation and a lot of, I don't want to say nervousness, but a lot of hesitancy for players to be aggressive or go for that extra drive. And I assume we'll be like, he's passing. He's like, he made that extra pass, but he probably should have taken that shot. That's what I expect, a little bit of hesitancy coming out to start Game 7.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think a slow start could certainly be the case. I think we've seen, though, from the Indiana Pacers, typically, if they do start slow, it doesn't mean that the second half won't feature 65 points. I think to coach's questions around Halliburton, I think when we tell the story of this NBA Finals, we will not lead with Halliburton was injured and it completely ruined the whole series. And I think that is absolutely correct. I do not think that I leave this game going, he's fine. He only played 23 minutes. They were very, very cautious still with Tyrese. A lot of, obviously, what he did, for the most part, JY, is still 35 feet away from the basket, it felt like, all in all, because it's not as easy for him to get downhill and things of that nature. But that basketball game was about the Indiana Pacers in their building being A+++ level ready. in a way that shouldn't have been surprising. The only hesitation that I entered into the game with was around Tyrese's health because, call me crazy, I still think he is the engine and driving force of this basketball team. And if he was 100% ready, I would have been getting into argument and fight after fight with the analysis that I was hearing heading into this game. Now, maybe others wouldn't have been as strong in their conviction on OKC, but this is a Pacers team who's not lost multiple games in a row in a very long time before the 2-game losing streak. So a third straight loss, that would be different. But more importantly, the road Oklahoma City Thunder have played their last game of this season, and they finished it in fitting fashion. Awful, wildly underwhelming. They have the third worst point differential of all of the teams that have played in these playoffs. And you might say, well, that's because they played the most games. They played one more road game than the Knicks, and their point differential's 30 points worse. They've played one less road game than the Pacers, and it's about 60 points worse than Indiana. It's a Thunder team with a ton of talent. But one of the few questions we did have about this basketball team, Tom, entering into the season was maybe the youth and experience and, even relative to the coach, and would that bang them up? And I think it is very clear to see that at minimum in the road spots, this team's not been able to answer the bell. They're 500 on the road in these playoffs.
And that's, something coming in was like, listen, again, they have all the talent in the world. They took their first step last year in the playoffs. And now you're thinking, like, are they exceeding expectations? Is this too much of a leap to go from, like, they were in the playoffs last year, now, like, now they're a championship team. Right. Like, they kind of have to go, like, get battle-tested to a certain point. And, maybe this year if they would have lost to Minnesota, you'd be like, all right, well, next year, like, it is all systems go because they proved themselves over the past 2 years. And, again, this is where I'm concerned about the start. And it's not just for the Thunder. It's for both teams because – a lot of people have mentioned it. There's literally one player in this series that has championship experience, and it's Pascal Siakam, and there's none of that on the OKC side. So I would, again, be concerned about the start for both teams, more specifically the Thunder, especially because they are at home, and falling behind, I think, is a huge, I don't want to say insurmountable thing to overcome if they fall down by 10, because obviously we've seen them roll off scoring time and time again. But, Coach, like, what would you ideally want to see from both teams in the first half of the first quarter?
It's going to be about, what role guy can step up and make me a play. Because I think when you look at it is, I expect a huge performance out of SGA. I just think that this is where the moment where rubber reached the road with him and his ascension into not just greatness in regards to this season, but his overall greatness of what he can become. So I look at him. Obviously, Siakam and Halliburton have to be good to the start. To me, it's like, does Jalen Williams go off early? Can Lou Dort, who his numbers, and I've been on Lou Dort this whole series, Lou Dort's numbers are wild. I mean, they are all over the place. But I'll tell you what, besides that game number 2 where he had the 5 personal fouls and got into foul trouble, 15, and I think he had 15 3, and I think 9, in his 3 home games. He's going to be a critical factor here. Here's the other thing. It's Game 7. So, honestly, guys, the NBA is probably telling the referees, stay the hell out of the way. Like, this game could get physical. I think this game slows down. So now you start looking at guys that are more defensive than offensive, because I think when it comes down to minutes and who plays, you're going to shorten your rotation and you're going to shorten your bench to get guys, because those runs are going to be very short.
Yeah, there's a lot for us to dive into within this series, how we got here, what we think for game number 7, the finals MVP race that at no point was a race. And then J-Dub was in it, and now you're like, well, what happens if the Pacers win? And all of these different things. We'll break it down after a quick commercial break right here on SportsGrid.
On June 25th at 7:30 p.m., ditch the guesswork. Ben Stevens, Kevin Walsh, James Young, and Tom Vecchio have your NBA draft betting coverage pick by pick, bet by bet, all night long. We got all the insights and expert analysis because betting blind isn't a strategy. Coverage starts at 7:30 p.m. on June 25th, only on SportsGrid.
Plenty of takeaways from Yankees-Dodgers where LA sent a message on Saturday, and the only way the Yankees could salvage it was somehow beating Yamamoto, and they did.
You're staring a sweep in the face. And after losing the World Series, knowing what the opponent is, you know what the narrative would have been on Sunday Night Monday. Oh, Yankees get swept by the Dodgers.
Game time decisions, only on SportsGrid.
Does a guy like Giannis fit onto that roster if you can make some of those changes?
I just don't see a KD pursuit as being realistic for the Knicks. But hey, if they can pull a rabbit out of a hat, as Leon Rose oftentimes can, I'd go after Giannis in a heartbeat. It's just, what type of package could they entice for the Milwaukee Bucks? And is it a 3 or 4 team trade? It gets a little bit tricky in that regard.
You see the Knicks there with a plus 340 price.
The early line, only on SportsGrid.
The Minnesota Vikings, J.J. McCarthy, who had such a good training camp last year, and it looked like he was pretty good, I believe, in the preseason, if I'm not mistaken, ended up going down for the full year. The Vikings are still obviously committed to him.
They knew that McCarthy was going to be available at some point in June. And McCarthy actually went on record last week and confirmed 2 weeks ago he was cleared medically. He did work last week. And he's going to be their starter.
Newswire, only on SportsGrid.
Betting above the rim right back here on SportsGrid. My question to you, Coach, was there something you saw the Indiana Pacers do in Game 6 that makes you think, you know what? If they can carry that into game number 7, they have a legitimate chance. Because I do think for many people, and I'm sure us included to some degree, the thought is still Oklahoma City is going to win game number 7. But was there something you saw from the Pacers in that Game 6 victory?
I think it's the way they loaded up on SGA. They pushed him to the basket, mostly to his, I think it was to his left, and then he likes to kind of spin back. So when he went to go spin, they sent guys. And at the end of the day, folks, I mean, listen, he's going to have the ball in your hands. His hands a lot. But he had 8 turnovers. I mean, he had 8 turnovers. And I think that is a big thing that we have to take into account is the other game, and I'm going to throw out game number 1 because game number 1, that's just a different part of the series. The other game they lost was in game number 3. That wasn't game 1. 6 turnovers. So at the end of the day, it's the ability for them to get out in transition by forcing their best player to constantly make mistakes. And I think that is the thing you have to look at if you're Oklahoma City is how do you cut down the turnovers? And I think it kind of gets to the betting market is you got to start digging and looking around for what are the turnover props if you could find them, because in games that they have lost, take away, like I said, game number 1, 6 and 8 turnovers. In the game that they won, 3, 2, I think 2. So he's had 3 or less turnovers. So if you find props where you can get under 3.5 turnovers for SGA, that could be something I'm looking for, because I think it's going to correlate itself together that if Oklahoma City's going to win, he has, Tom, to value the basketball.
It also comes down to, what we expect from the game pace overall. I think you and I both anticipate the under, which is sitting at 215 right now. Just fewer possessions overall. Fewer, again, back and forth nature, I really don't anticipate. And I think as we saw in the beginning of Game 6, after the Pacers were down, 10-2? The only points they had were from free throws because they were 0 of 8 to start. I think we will see, I don't want to say like a choppy gameplay, but if this, we're on an 0 and 8 run that we're down, timeout. So we're just going to see things broken up and both teams take things very, very cautiously to start. And that's what will just eliminate the turnover potential overall from someone like SGA. And the 8 was not only a season high, that was his playoff career high turnovers at 8 that they had from the last game. So I am wary on scoring props for basically every player in this game. Seeing a 32 number, if it's still that for SGA, I think that is way, way too high when a game total is at 215. We saw him up at 33, 34, and the game total is 228. Now we have a total that has dropped 13 points, and his point total has barely moved at 34. Now it's down to 32. And with that game total dropping, the team total for the Thunder drops as well. But again, his point prop is still barely moving. So now we have him have a score higher and higher percentage of points when everything is going to be slowed down. I just don't see it for SGA or really anyone. I can convince myself of an under for basically everyone across the board.
Yeah, I think Shea is a very tricky guy to fade because the minutes project to be really high as long as the game is close, which could make up for some of that. So the attempts could climb, Tom. The efficiency could not be there. What I would just say to the Indiana Pacers, 42 attempts from 3. And they didn't shoot it well at all in the fourth quarter. The game was also over. They only scored 18 points. But that is how they approached the games to start the series against Oklahoma City, and I think it is how they are going to have to approach the game. The Thunder, a few times now, it feels like they are leaving the door open to just lose on math. And I know that it's an aspect of these playoffs, really, but certainly the finals we've not seen be a thing, right? Ever since Boston was eliminated, we've now pretended that nobody's ever had a problem with a three-point shot. Everything's good. We're fine. Nobody's complaining. But that stuff still matters. And if your opponent is going to double you up from beyond the arc, you are up against it. It is just that simple. Now, I anticipate the Thunder having a better game from beyond the arc. Their starters made 1 3. It was, I mean, that's outrageous. 1 of 13 combined from their starting lineup. The made threes of the game were largely for that team in the fourth quarter. I believe 4 or 5 of their made threes came in quarter number 4. If OKC finishes game 7, plays to the under, right, Tom? 6, 7 made threes. Maybe they still win. Maybe.
Right.
But not if the Pacers bomb away 42, 43, 45 made threes, and we get an opportunity for the Pacers to make 8, 9, 10 more threes than their opponent.
And that's really comes down to, like you said, is math at a certain point. Even if you are shooting a horrible percentage, if the volume's there, obviously, the points will just pile up at a certain point. If I was forced to decide, I would say the Pacers don't touch 33 attempts just because I just don't think the possessions back and forth will allow that. But again, what the lack of scoring that we saw and that happened in game, what was it, with the Thunder shot 3 of 16 from 3.
But they still won game 4, I believe.
Yeah, game 4, where they won by 7 points. It was 111 to 104, if I remember correctly. And I was saying going into game 5, I was like, if you wanted to convince yourself that the Thunder could cover the game, it's like, listen, they were 3 of 16 from 3. Even if they shot 5 of 16, which is terrible, all of a sudden they would have gone from winning from 7 points. They're all of a sudden winning by 13. Winning by 7, they would have won by 13 points if they had just 2 more threes. So again, the threes, I think the percentage will increase, but the volume won't be there for the Thunder. It'll be the opposite for the Pacers. The volume won't be.
And really quick with the Thunder, it's about the fact of if you miss a large percentage of three-point shots, you're allowed to get out and run out. So it's a lot deeper than that. It's shooting at a better clip, but it's also the fact not turning the ball over against the team that wants to run and getting out-rebounded. Every metric that OKC lost, they lost bad. They have to reverse that in Game 7, which I expect them to do because they're going to be in their home arena.
All right, we stick with the NBA Finals. We will eventually, though, get to the Desmond Bane trade, which surprised a lot of people earlier this week. It's all coming up on Betting Above the Rim.
On June 25th at 7:30 p.m., ditch the guesswork. Ben Stevens, Kevin Walsh, James Young, and Tom Vecchio have your NBA draft betting coverage pick by pick, bet by bet, all night long. We got all the insights and expert analysis because betting blind isn't a strategy. Coverage starts at 7:30 p.m. on June 25th, only on SportsGrid.
Plenty of takeaways from Yankees-Dodgers where LA sent a message on Saturday, and the only way the Yankees could salvage it was somehow beating Yamamoto, and they did.
You're staring a sweep in the face. And after losing the World Series, knowing what the opponent is, you know what the narrative would have been on Sunday Night Monday. The Yankees get swept by the Dodgers.
Game time decisions, only on SportsGrid.
Does a guy like Giannis fit onto that roster if you can make some of those changes?
I just don't see a KD pursuit as being realistic for the Knicks. But hey, if they can pull a rabbit out of a hat, as Leon Rose oftentimes can, I'd go after Giannis in a heartbeat. It's just, what type of package could they entice for the Milwaukee Bucks? And is it a 3 or 4 team trade? It gets a little bit tricky in that regard.
You see the Knicks there with a plus 340 price.
The early line, only on SportsGrid.
The Minnesota Vikings, J.J. McCarthy, who had such a good training camp last year, and it looked like he was pretty good, I believe, in the preseason, if I'm not mistaken, ended up going down for the full year. The Vikings are still obviously committed to him.
They knew that McCarthy was going to be available at some point in June. And McCarthy actually went on record last week and confirmed 2 weeks ago he was cleared medically. He did work last week. And he's going to be their starter.
Newswire, only on SportsGrid.
Betting above the rim right here with you on SportsGrid. I want to quickly just try and talk through the Finals MVP market if you think it's maybe even up for debate right now, either side of it. I'll start on the Shea J-Dub debate that was bubbling a little bit going into game number 6. I found the Jalen Williams argument to be non-existent, and then he was minus 40 in game 6. I mean, I know that's not like, Shea's minus 17 was necessarily something to write home about, but I'm not sure minus 40 when you were already nowhere near as good as Shea in the series is something that can be overcame. Coach, your thoughts on the Thunder portion of the Finals MVP race?
There is no conversation. It's over. So, obviously when you look at it, J-Dub could he have a great game 7? Yes, but SJ has been far away, been the better player. That's why if you start looking at the game, the Thunder being minus 290, if you want to just go money line, I would just go SGA minus 240 to win the MVP because I don't see a pathway for J-Dub or anyone else for that team, Tom, to even have a chance on getting the MVP.
Like, this is the discussion we have in a lot of different sports for awards, and SGA is the right answer. SGA is going to win it. The argument people want to say is like, oh, what would it take for Williams to win the award? He legitimately needs to have 50 points. That's an exaggeration.
And a bad SGA game.
So everything that you see right now, it's like SGA averages more points. Yes, J-Dub is highlighted by a 40-point performance, which SGA does not have. He has not scored 40 in the finals. But the totality of, and again, the body of work that SGA has put up is better than J-Dub. And the recency bias of like, oh my God, 40 points. Like, he would literally need to go out and score 50 points for me to entertain the argument that it's not going to be SGA. And seeing 50 points in Game 7 would be monumental. Like, it'd be a literal all-time performance.
Well, it also would throw away the fact that you and I think that the game's probably going under.
Absolutely. That's what I'm saying.
Right.
It would go against everything, and SGA would be scoring 15 points, and they're like, listen, we're just going to give the ball to Williams because he's not missing, which is not going to happen.
I just think really quick, if you are big on maybe you think that Jalen Williams has a chance, which none of us think he does, then I would just go to the alt market and just go 25-plus points and plus 158.
Very fair.
Fair. I'll just go there.
Even 30 is
even 30,
really, plus 4, like 30 is along the lines of what we're saying. but it still wouldn't get him to the MVP.
Right.
Agreed. Shea is averaging significantly more points more efficiently while also assisting more and being more impactful on defense. Okay, so that's not even close. Yeah, again,
we're all in agreement. It would require a monumental game for Williams to win.
Absolutely.
The Pacer side is either more of a debate or not really, because people also, could think it is Pascal. Pascal averaging at the moment 20 points per game, along with 8 boards and 4 assists, averaging 3 stocks when you round up. Tyrese Halliburton is averaging 15 points a game with 5 rebounds and 7 assists, averaging 2 stocks when you round up. So far, Pascal Siakam has provided more consistency. I think that Tyrese Halliburton has provided more of what this team needs in order for them to win the series. Ultimately, through the first 3 games, I didn't find this to be particularly close. I know some did. I did not. Tyrese Halliburton's shot is worth a lot more than Pascal scoring 28 in a loss. I firmly believe that. Also, Tyrese Halliburton's 14 points and 5 assists that he had in game number 6 are not going to wow or go, oh. Well, he was plus 25 in 23 minutes. He was the most impactful player in the game. Now, it's going to swing, of course, on game number 7, but I think the market is still treating it somewhat more like, Pascal's got a comfortable lead. That's not something I agree with, Tom.
I don't either, and this comes down to recency bias, recent performance, box score watching. But as we have continuously talked about, not just for this year's but the playoffs overall, what Halliburton is good at doesn't always show up in terms of box score, and that is very important and a literal driving factor of why they win games. It's very simple.
Well, very simply put, if you look at the 3 games that they've won, 14, 10, and 6, 22, 11, and 9, and then the 14 points in 23 minutes. I think it should be a hell of a lot closer to this number for Tyrese Halliburton, because if he has a big game in Game 7, he could steal it. Now, here's the crazy thing. He'll never get it. He'll never sniff it.
Whoa.
But there's a part of me that wants to put a couple of dollars.
No, stop. Don't do this.
Okay.
Go ahead. No,
ready?
go ahead.
Ready?
Oh, God.
Ready? Who in every big moment for Indiana seems to be on the floor?
TJ McConnell.
Every time. Listen.
That is crazy.
$1. I might not the mortgage. Just $1.
We'll be right back.
$1. That's all.
SportsGrid.
On June 25th at 7:30 p.m., ditch the guesswork. Ben Stevens, Kevin Walsh, James Young, and Tom Vecchio have your NBA draft betting coverage pick by pick, bet by bet, all night long. We got all the insights and expert analysis, because betting blind isn't a strategy. Coverage starts at 7:30 p.m. on June 25th, only on SportsGrid.
Plenty of takeaways from Yankees-Dodgers where LA sent a message on Saturday, and the only way the Yankees could salvage it was somehow beating Yamamoto, and they did.
You're staring a sweep in the face. And after losing the World Series, knowing what the opponent is, you know what the narrative would have been on Sunday Night Monday. The Yankees get swept by the Dodgers.
Game time decisions, only on SportsGrid.
Does a guy like Giannis fit onto that roster if you can make some of those changes?
I just don't see a KD pursuit as being realistic for the Knicks. But hey, if they can pull a rabbit out of a hat, as Leon Rose oftentimes can, I'd go after Giannis in a heartbeat. It's just, what type of package could they entice for the Milwaukee Bucks? And is it a 3 or 4 team trade? It gets a little bit tricky in that regard.
You see the Knicks there with a plus 340 price.
The early line, only on SportsGrid.
The Minnesota Vikings, J.J. McCarthy, who had such a good training camp last year, and it looked like he was pretty good, I believe, in the preseason, if I'm not mistaken, ended up going down for the full year. The Vikings are still obviously committed to him.
They knew that McCarthy was going to be available at some point in June. And McCarthy actually went on record last week and confirmed 2 weeks ago he was cleared medically. He did work last week. And he's going to be their starter.
Newswire, only on SportsGrid.
Kevin Walsh, Tom Vecchio, Coach James Young, we're with you right here on SportsGrid. And the Orlando Magic made a blockbuster deal with the Memphis Grizzlies that nobody really saw coming because Desmond Bane didn't ask out. I don't think Desmond Bane was really on the block. I think the Orlando Magic blew away the Grizzlies with their offer to bring in what they seem to believe is a missing piece. Coach, tell me your thoughts on the Orlando Magic acquiring Desmond Bane out of Memphis.
Well, when you look at a team like Orlando, their biggest problem to me was their ability to shoot the ball from three. Now, you thought that they took care of that by going to get someone of the level, I wouldn't say the level, but KCP, who came off a good shooting season. Magic last in the NBA this past season at 31.8% from floor. Folks, they were last by almost 2 percentage points. Like, that's wild how far they're off. They only made 11.2 three-pointers per game. That was last by 0.6. And then you look at, obviously, the amount of shots that they took, it was also in the bottom 10. So Desmond Bane's ability to shoot the ball from three is exactly what Orlando would need to put on that roster. My argument is, did they give up too much? Listen, if you talk about the Cole Anthony, okay, going, I don't mind it. KCP, I don't mind it. To me, it's the 4 first-round picks and a 1-pick swap. To me, you either give away one, or the. I'm saying, like, you give away more picks or the players. I feel like they give up the picks and the players, and I think that's my problem with the deal, Tom.
I like what you said. Magic last in the league in percentage, last in the league in threes made per game. This is filling a need that they had. If the Magic are, as we saw this year, taking the first step to becoming a team that we believe that they can become in an open East, especially next year, those picks at 20, 22, 24, wherever they may end up, are useless. Those are very low value picks in my mind. And a lot of people agree. It's like, listen, half the time players in the teens don't work out that you draft. Getting a player at 20 or 22, those are project players. If you have an open East, you are filling a direct need that you need right now with a three-pointer. And yes, this does not say that the team is perfect and they have other things to work on. But man, I like having a complement scorer alongside Franz Wagner and Paulo Banchero that can just straight shoot.
And I don't have a problem with him going there because I think it makes sense for what they need.
The picks, 4 picks, whatever.
I guess the thing is as a Knicks fan, then people are saying, well, Mikal got 5 first rounds for Mikal. Now, I'm not saying Mikal is better than Bane. They're different players, and obviously, you know, and Bane's a better player than Mikal.
No, Bridges is better, and I'm going to let you go because I have a lot to say.
You know, because my whole point is if you're going to knock the Knicks for giving up 5, 4 for this guy is, I think, too much. And you have to look at the fact that Bane has had injury concerns. Bridges, game in, game out. He's playing. He may not play great, but he's going to play. And he's going to give you 35 minutes. He's going to give you 38 minutes a night. Bane does have injury concerns, Kev.
So, all right, here's the deal. Mikal Bridges goes for 5 picks. The Knicks make the conference finals, and everybody still, the consensus is, worst trade I've ever seen. Worst trade I've ever seen. Well, hold on. Mikal Bridges has 2 of the most important defensive plays in the history of Knicks basketball, and they made the conference finals, and Mikal Bridges is going nowhere, and he's better than Desmond Bane. I don't really care. People can argue me on that. They're wrong. But everybody was like, no, too many picks. Okay. Rudy Gobert got traded from Utah to Minnesota. Still, nobody will say a nice word about the deal. Back-to-back conference finals appearances. Also, Rudy Gobert is 10 times the player Desmond Bane is. Rudy Gobert is going to the Hall of Fame. I don't know if people are comfortable with that, but it is true, and he deserves it. He's a 4-time defensive player of the year. Yeah, people slander. But now we get the hipster blockbuster deal. Oh, the 7th seed, the young Orlando Magic, get Desmond Bane, the 3rd best player on the Memphis Grizzlies, and it's nothing but praise, and now picks don't matter. Hold on, what? Well, the Grizzlies are incredible at drafting. So they're going to get the 16th pick, right? That's about it. You can pretty much guarantee that. They also gave up a Phoenix Suns pick that if this team, I have no idea what's going on with Phoenix. I have no idea what this season's going to be. Could end up top 5. By the way, with the way the lottery stuff all moves around, if that pick somehow lands inside the top 3, it's one of the worst decisions the Magic will have ever made. Because DeBonta and Darren Peterson or Boozer all, and their projected value and ceiling is as high as possible of that freshman trio that's going in. Now, the other picks, Tom, the ones that are supposed to be in the 20s and things, okay, fine, but that's if those are in the 20s.
Sure.
The Orlando Magic, what they have going for them is a 1-2 punch who are incredibly young and seemingly talented. And I understand that Franz and Paolo need shooting around them to give them an opportunity to progress to their best selves. But did this team need to give up that in order to give them a level of shooting? We couldn't have paid Luke Kennard. I don't understand, because I don't think Orlando's winning the East next year.
No.
They have the 5th best odds of any team in the East, and I think that might be kind. So I feel like this young team rushed something they didn't need to rush.
I think that's the thing. I don't mind the swing, but it was a swing maybe a little bit too early.
Would you have been happy with 3 picks?
I don't know if I would have given more than 2.
I don't know.
So the two players and the 2 picks.
The reality is they needed to overpay to get a guy that wasn't on the block.
Sure.
Out.
Fair.
Here's my thing then, right? How far away was that deal from getting them Devin Booker? Because everyone's going to tell me Devin's not on the block, but again, neither was Desmond Bane.
4 picks.
4 picks plus
players.
one of them is Phoenix's pick, which is all Phoenix cares about getting back. How far away would they have been? Would you have had to add Suggs in the deal instead of Cole Anthony? I'd have done that.
I would say you would have done that from the Phoenix, but from a new owner, knowing that you're trading Durant and then trading Booker and being saddled with this horrible Bradley Beal contract, for a franchise would just be dead.
Well,
my spin on that is
look to next year.
Well, you still have the Beal contract, and you're trading Durant at much less than you traded for Durant. Phoenix is not going to be projected as a playoff team next year, no matter what.
And then you're just looking towards.
So ultimately, if I trade Durant and Devin, I actually now can rebuild, and I'll have my own draft assets. So where if I am bad, it's comfortable.
And also, for a Phoenix perspective, it lets your fans know, like, we're starting over. Like, there's
no middling.
There's no middling.
Phoenix is trying to bring in Rudy Gobert in a Minnesota deal so they can win 48 games next year.
So I think that's the thing. That team needs to punt and start over. But the interesting thing that now comes out of Memphis is, after making the trade,
we'll get to the Memphis side. We'll get to the Memphis.
Is there another part?
Am I being? But let me ask you this: do you feel that Orlando legitimately can win the East next year?
No, but they got better.
They 100% got better. They got better, but they didn't do a deal where the bar is get better. They did a deal that there should be a percentage of people picking them to win the East, and you don't think that percentage of people is nuts. That's the deal they made, in my opinion.
I don't think they'll win the East, but I do think that this is like the first step along the journey. Like, you need to start allocating or acquiring talent to put yourself in a position where when Paolo and Franz do reach their ceiling, then we can make one more move and we're ready to strike now. This is the first step along the journey.
Just to make you go further, does this make an Orlando a second-round team?
Yes.
I don't think so.
Well, again, I think I don't think it's a guarantee either.
Right.
Because I think you're going to see both all 3 of Cleveland, New York, and Indiana placed in front of them.
Sure.
And then you have the question mark duo of Boston and Philly, right?
And Milwaukee.
Well, yeah, and then there's the Bucks with the best player in the conference. Now, that's 6 teams. I'm not saying all 6 are better than
Orlando. And you can't sleep on Detroit with the way they looked at the second half. What do they do? Because they got assets that they can move.
But Kevin Durant might be on the Miami Heat the next time we do this show.
But also, part of the thing I would argue is that, like, if this is turning into an arms race, the Magic needed to get better so they don't fall behind.
And I would say, due to their age, they didn't need to get better.
Okay.
We'll talk to Memphis side after a break right here on SportsGrid.
On June 25th at 7:30 p.m., ditch the guesswork. Ben Stevens, Kevin Walsh, James Young, and Tom Vecchio have your NBA draft betting coverage pick by pick, bet by bet, all night long. We got all the insights and expert analysis because betting blind isn't a strategy. Coverage starts at 7:30 p.m. on June 25th, only on SportsGrid.
Plenty of takeaways from Yankees-Dodgers where LA sent a message on Saturday, and the only way the Yankees could salvage it was somehow beating Yamamoto, and they did.
You're staring a sweep in the face. And after losing the World Series, knowing what the opponent is, you know what the narrative would have been on Sunday night, Monday. Oh, the Yankees get swept by the Dodgers.
Game time decisions. Only on SportsGrid.
Does a guy like Giannis fit onto that roster if you can make some of those changes?
I just don't see a KD pursuit as being realistic for the Knicks. But hey, if they can pull a rabbit out of a hat, as Leon Rose oftentimes can, I'd go after Giannis in a heartbeat. It's just, what type of package could they entice for the Milwaukee Bucks? And is it a 3 or 4 team trade? It gets a little bit tricky in that regard.
You see the Knicks there with a plus 340 price.
The early line. Only on SportsGrid.
The Minnesota Vikings, J.J. McCarthy, who had such a good training camp last year, and it looked like he was pretty good, I believe, in the preseason, if I'm not mistaken, ended up going down for the full year. The Vikings are still obviously committed to him.
They knew that McCarthy was going to be available at some point in June. And McCarthy actually went on record last week and confirmed 2 weeks ago he was cleared medically. He did work last week. And he's going to be their starter.
Newswire. Only on SportsGrid.
Only on JY Grid. Almost jumped the gun last segment. Ooh. Hot on these Memphis Grizzlies. I think JY lays the floor for the Grizzlies side correctly in that what's next? I think, JY, there are 2 possible paths for Memphis to walk following the Bane deal. I'll just say off the bat why I like how Memphis did in this deal. I like both options. I think either option's awesome for this team. But let me go to you. What were you alluding to? What are you thinking as Memphis makes that move, trading Desmond Bane away?
When you look at a team that had 48 wins and 8 1/8 in the West, look at the fact that Zach Edey, who had a really good rookie year, is already out for next year. We don't know when Jalen Wells comes back. You are now at this point, in my opinion, a middling team in the West, right? Thunder are going to be better next year. Rockets will be better. I think the Lakers are going to be better. Nuggets should be better. Clippers, I still think. Minnesota, like all these teams. Warriors only when you're like, when are they going to fall off the cliff? So right then and there, I've named 6, if not 7 teams that are better than you next year. And you expect some kind of jump from either Sacramento and definitely something out of San Antonio. So when those things come into play, I'm saying, I've always said this, either you're winning or you're rebuilding. That's why I've had a problem with the Atlanta Hawks for the last 4 years, because they've been stuck in the middle. You don't want a middle list. You have to there's got to be another move. The question is it Ja or is it Jaren Jackson Jr.? I think it's Jaren Jackson Jr. because I think, number one, the popularity that Ja has still in Memphis, still, if you're not a winning team, could still sell you tickets. But I also think Jaren Jackson Jr. has its ability as a stretch 4 or right in the right system, a 5, can probably net you more in return than Ja because of Ja's off-court problems. A team that drafts well, a team that knows that they're stuck right now, they're in a middling phase. If I'm Memphis, Tom, I'm looking to trade Jaren Jackson Jr. next.
He should have been traded this year, honestly. I see no path forward. And I assume your 2 paths, the paths that you're talking about are 1, hard tank.
Okay.
And 2 would be like, let's see what we do. And if we get to the trade deadline and then we lose it, then we'll just trade Jaren Jackson and then we'll tank from there.
So yeah. No, my 2 options are not tank immediately or tank
eventually.
To tank a couple hours later.
I get rid of Jaren Jackson. I don't think this team has any shot at competing in the West next year. I don't think there's a shot. I think Portland's a sneaky good team. They played significantly better than a lot of people anticipated. And although they're not going to make the playoffs next year, they're a team that's going to cause a lot of teams fits. And again, with what we get from San Antonio, I just don't see a path forward for Memphis. I don't like what they have in store, and they just don't have enough depth to compete for anything greater than a play-in seed.
So, all right. Let's do the couple steps back overview of the Memphis Grizzlies. Just Memphis 3 seasons ago, or 4, the 21-22 season.
2 seed.
Okay? They won 56 games. They were the 2 seed. Now, does anyone remember what happened?
What that trick?
Now, that Grizzlies team, right, did end up, I think they won a round, and I think then they got Ja got injured and they lost to Golden State that year, right? The next year they win 51 games again. They get eliminated in round 1. That was the Lakers and LeBron. But all of a sudden it's like, whoa, this Grizzlies team's ready. Then Ja runs into all his issues. He's never healthy on top of that. And then Desmond Bane's not really healthy. And then Jaren maybe a little here and there. And all of a sudden it's like, does any of this work? Those two are both right now 25 years old. Will be 26 entering next season. For Shea is 26 this year, and all we talk about is how young the Thunder are. I think it's totally fine, Tom. You're correct that currently, as constructed, Memphis isn't winning the West next season. You're absolutely right.
I don't think they're a borderline playoff team at best.
So that I don't agree with.
Okay.
Unless Ja, would be fair, gets injured as always. That's fair. But this was a team that was avoiding the play-in almost all year, and then obviously the bottom fell out in a crazy way. Jenkins gets fired. They still won 48 games. They were 2 games back of the Lakers, who were the 3 seed in the Western Conference. So I think that this team's options are trade Jaren Jackson Jr. I'm never trading Ja.
No.
You're not going to get the return on it. They adore him. And you don't need to trade Ja in order to miss the playoffs.
Correct.
And get good lottery picks, okay? Trade Jaren Jackson Jr., see what's out there, because it might be a lot. Knicks apparently going to kick the tires. I could see the Spurs wanting involved in that race. The Rockets. I think all those teams could be really, really interested. The other option is the complete other way, where now they have all these Orlando assets plus their own assets, and they can maybe get themselves in the race for a star. The second they completed the Bane deal, they called, hey, KD, what are our chances? Now they're out because KD just wants to go to Miami or Texas. But I think you have a Grizzlies team now with a really well-run front office, really good at drafting. They either can take small shots in the draft continuously, Tom, or they can take a big swing and hope that eventually they could upgrade on a Desmond Bane.
So the question becomes is if it's not KD, who is it? Because that's what I would, because like we're talking about like what's the availability of these stars. If it's not KD, is there a willingness of a player to want to go there? And then does that make them, like, is that a longer term goal to get there because that's what's available?
What I would say is this team now with what I believe they have available to them assets-wise, right, with the Suns pick, they would get in a Devin Booker race if it were to happen, right? If Boston actually puts Jaylen Brown on the block, there's sputters. I think they can get themselves in that race. And I also think, because I think they are young, 2 years from now, I mean, who knows?
So if they get Brown, would they have to move Jaren Jackson?
I don't imagine so, based on the fact that they were just able to send out Bane, because it would be a picks-heavy based deal anyway, because Boston's looking to clear money and things like that. So I don't think they would have to then also trade one of the stars.
Guy to watch, I don't know if this would be a small play. I want to see what happens to Anthony Simons this offseason. I think that's a guy that can get moved, that can go somewhere else, and could develop to a star. Yeah. Definitely a scorer.
We head over to Coach's Corner next on this show, where one of the most talked about players in the WNBA has been making some strides. That's next right here on SportsGrid.
On June 25th at 7:30 p.m., ditch the guesswork. Ben Stevens, Kevin Walsh, James Young, and Tom Vecchio have your NBA draft betting coverage pick by pick, bet by bet, all night long. We got all the insights and expert analysis because betting blind isn't a strategy. Coverage starts at 7:30 p.m. on June 25th, only on SportsGrid.
Plenty of takeaways from Yankees-Dodgers where LA sent a message on Saturday, and the only way the Yankees could salvage it was somehow beating Yamamoto, and they did.
You're staring a sweep in the face. And after losing the World Series, knowing what the opponent is, you know what the narrative would have been on Sunday night, Monday. Oh, the Yankees get swept by the Dodgers.
Game time decisions, only on SportsGrid.
Does a guy like Giannis fit onto that roster if you can make some of those changes?
I just don't see a KD pursuit as being realistic for the Knicks. But hey, if they can pull a rabbit out of a hat, as Leon Rose oftentimes can, I'd go after Giannis in a heartbeat. It's just, what type of package could they entice for the Milwaukee Bucks? And is it a 3 or 4 team trade? It gets a little bit tricky in that regard.
You see the Knicks there with a plus 340 price.
The early line, only on SportsGrid.
The Minnesota Vikings, J.J. McCarthy, who had such a good training camp last year, and it looked like he was pretty good, I believe, in the preseason, if I'm not mistaken, ended up going down for the full year. The Vikings are still obviously committed to him.
They knew that McCarthy was going to be available at some point in June. And McCarthy actually went on record last week and confirmed 2 weeks ago he was cleared medically. He did work last week. And he's going to be their starter.
Newswire, only on SportsGrid.
Betting above the rim right here on SportsGrid, and today's WNBA slate will spotlight the Chicago Sky and the Phoenix Mercury. Now, Phoenix, some excitement with Kalia Copper set to play her first game of the season, but the excitement right now for the Chicago Sky is Angel Reese playing the best basketball of her sophomore season so far. With that, we send it over to Coach's Corner.
When you talk about the WNBA, one of the more intriguing stories and storylines has been the ascension and the play of Angel Reese. And Angel Reese has a big matchup today, playing at home versus the Phoenix Mercury. Phoenix Mercury right now about a 10.5 or 11-point favorite. So it kind of gets me thinking about Angel Reese and what she has done over the course of the season. So obviously here you go, minus 515 on the money line, but here's where I want to focus on is Angel. 9.1 points per game in the first 7 games. Here's the key stat to look at, is right down there to 30.9% from the floor. As someone that has coached bigs, the shooting percentage split has always been a concern of mine because as a big, you need to be shooting at least 50 or so percent from the floor. Now, obviously, assists are fine, okay, and the rebounds per game, we know it is great. The thing about the assists that's a little tricky is the fact that number of offensive rebounding touch she gets, she tends to force and put the ball back up rather than kick the ball back out where everyone is in the lane. But then something happened. It's the last 4 games which Angel Reese has gotten markedly better. Her points per game are up. Her rebounds are down. But look at the assists and look at the field goal for shooting percentages. She's nearly at 50%, and she's nearly doubled her assists right now at 5.5. There's a couple of reasons why you have to look at why this is taking place right now with Angel Reese. Number one, and respectfully, I'm going to say this, Courtney Vandersloot got hurt. And for them, it was better for Sloot to be out of the lineup because I thought from the get-go that this team was not going anywhere, and it was important for them to kind of get someone going like a Haley Van Lith. Now, the game that Angel Reese had a triple-double, That was also to give him Haley Van Lith, had 16 points, 5 rebounds, and assists, shot well from the floor, and no one is talking about it. So to me, getting Van Lith and surrounding Angel Reese with better shooters makes sense. If you also think about how Chicago played last year, they played markedly better in the first half of the year. Everyone's going to talk about Teresa Weatherspoon being let go. My bigger take is they traded Marina Mabrey, a seasoned veteran, a guard, and a guard to get ready, shoot the ball really well from 3. And her and Kennedy Carter together kind of gave more room for Angel to operate. Let's get to today's matchup versus Phoenix, because now you're going to be like, all right, Coach, you're all over it today. If you look at it, 12.5 points, 12.5 rebounds, over a minus 180 for a double-double. Ready, folks? This team, the Phoenix Mercury, are one of the best teams in regards to guarding inside. It was wide that if they would have had Jonquel Jones would have played, I would have went under the prop even though she got hurt. So this over under 12.5. I'm going under 12.5 points for Angel Reese today. Maybe she can find her way to the double-double market. But Kevin, the way that Phoenix defends in the inside with Satu Sabali, with Alyssa Thomas, and they have enough guards to pester the perimeter, I don't think Angel Reese goes over 12.5 points today.
One of the most fascinating games of the WNBA season here, Coach, with Reese on the run that she is currently on, and then Tom, Phoenix bringing back Kalia Copper, and in the props market, not really being priced, in my eyes at least, like it's her first game.
Yeah, this is something that we were talking about. You said it was 14.5 for her point prop. So this is something, as we're coming up against the break shortly, this is something we'll get into. We also, tomorrow's game between the Fever and the Aces, 1 point spread, at least the last time that I saw. We could also talk about that. We both have some action, or at least I have some action in regards to Satu Sabali.
You think it maybe just created some of the value on the Satu numbers, the Copper coming back and dropping some of the props potentially?
I like, spoiler for later, some of her combined props, but also she's coming off of some bad shooting performances, and I don't expect that to continue. I also expect a good amount of points in this game.
0 of 8 from 3, I believe.
Yeah,
Satu
3 of
Sabali
11,
most recent,
whatever it was overall.
I think it's going to be really interesting, Coach. We can get into it. We'll get into it more a little bit later on. We go through some of our bets, but just how this Phoenix team is playing their best basketball of the season. They just won in New York. During this run, I know they beat the Aces. Maybe they beat the Storm in there as well. They've been playing great ball. Now you bring Copper back. We'll see how it looks. We're talking Kevin Durant next.
On June 25th at 7:30 p.m., ditch the guesswork. Ben Stevens, Kevin Walsh, James Young, and Tom Vecchio have your NBA draft betting coverage pick by pick, bet by bet, all night long. We got all the insights and expert analysis because betting blind isn't a strategy. Coverage starts at 7:30 p.m. on June 25th, only on SportsGrid.
Plenty of takeaways from Yankees-Dodgers where LA sent a message on Saturday, and the only way the Yankees could salvage it was somehow beating Yamamoto, and they did.
You're staring a sweep in the face. And after losing the World Series, knowing what the opponent is, you know what the narrative would have been on Sunday night, Monday. Oh, the Yankees get swept by the Dodgers.
Game time decisions. Only on SportsGrid.
Does a guy like Giannis fit onto that roster if you can make some of those changes?
I just don't see a KD pursuit as being realistic for the Knicks. But hey, if they can pull a rabbit out of a hat, as Leon Rose oftentimes can, I'd go after Giannis in a heartbeat. It's just, what type of package could they entice for the Milwaukee Bucks? And is it a 3 or 4 team trade? It gets a little bit tricky in that regard.
You see the Knicks there with a plus 340 price.
The early line. Only on SportsGrid.
The Minnesota Vikings, J.J. McCarthy, who had such a good training camp last year, and it looked like he was pretty good, I believe, in the preseason, if I'm not mistaken, ended up going down for the full year. The Vikings are still obviously committed to him.
They knew that McCarthy was going to be available at some point in June. And McCarthy actually went on record last week and confirmed 2 weeks ago he was cleared medically. He did work last week, and he's going to be their starter.
Newswire, only on SportsGrid.